Hello, my name's Keely, and today I thought I would share with you my story of why and how I became a Christian. Well, as a child, I grew up in a one-parent household. I grew up with my mum. My mum and dad divorced when I was a baby, and my mum had boyfriends, but most of the time it was just me and my mum. And about 2 weeks before my 10th birthday, I went on holiday with my grandma and granddad. We went on vacation to stay with some friends of the family. Now, these friends of the family, Alf and Yvonne Kendrick, Alf had been a family friend for years, and his children and my mum and her siblings grew up together. They were very close from what I understand. Then at some point his first wife died of cancer. And I don't know whether he became a Christian while she was alive or whether it was afterwards, but he became a Christian and then he married Yvonne. And Yvonne was a gospel singer with the most beautiful voice. And so we went to stay with them, and they lived in a little cottage in the middle of Wales, sort of down this dirt track. And when we went to stay with them, we ended up going to their church while we were there. And they went to a church called Newtown Pentecostal Church, which I believe has a different name now. Now, while we were there, their church were doing baptisms. Now, anyone who's been to a baptism, now these baptisms are full immersion baptisms, so where somebody's dunked completely under the water. So it's not a little head sprinkling, it's right under the water. And most churches in the Western world have a nice heated sort of big overgrown bath under the floorboards in the church. Okay, not Newtown Pentecostal. Oh no. They did their baptisms in the river. Now, anyone who's been to Wales, even in the summer, it can be rather cold. Okay. And it must have been the end of June, beginning of July time. So it was warming up, but it was still cold. And I remember thinking, I remember stood on the top of this riverbank, and there were people next to me, and there were people all down the bank. And then there was some people in the water, and they were doing these baptisms. And I remember thinking, I just remember looking around, everyone was singing. And I just remember looking up at the people next to me. And then I remember looking down the bank at the people down the bank, and then the people in the water, not knowing what they were doing. But I looked at them and I thought, they have something that I've not got. And I want it. Now, I didn't understand what they had, why I didn't have it, or why I wanted it. I just knew there was something. These people, I distinctly remember these people have something I've not got, and I want it. Well, my grandma and granddad, my grandma actually gave her life to Jesus while we were there. But then my grandma and granddad went back home. And I ended up staying for an extra week, which wasn't planned, because Yvonne was going to be singing in a church sort of south of us. So they decided I could stay for an extra week, and then they could drop me off on the way, on the way to this singing engagement. So that's what we did. I stayed an extra week. So I ended up going to church a second time. And this one was in the church, and I remember the pastor was preaching, can't remember what he said, but there was at one point he asked people if anyone wanted to give their lives to Jesus. Now, I didn't understand what that meant at all. But when he asked this question, it was like something punched me in the stomach. And it was like, oh, I knew that I got to do whatever this man was asking. I didn't know what this man was asking, but I knew that whatever it was he was asking, I needed to do it. And I I was very, very shy then, and I wouldn't move. I was a little mouse. And I just remember Yvonne turning to me and she said, Keely, would you like to give your life to Jesus? And I was sort of like, yeah. And I can't remember much more. All I remember is her taking me down to the front. And I guess I was taken through what we call a sinner's prayer, which is a basic prayer of saying sorry to God for doing my things my way, and asking and giving my life to Jesus and saying, Jesus, I give my life to you. And I guess that's what I was saying. I can't actually remember. I do remember being taken into a back room, and I remember being given something called a Tops book, which Tops was some books that were given, that were daily devotional sort of books, and there was one for new Christians. And I was given this daily devotional book for kids, this Tops book. And I remember as time went on, I tried to read it, and I was actually dyslexic, so I couldn't read. And I remember desperately trying to read this book and couldn't. I gave up in the end because I just couldn't do it. But what I will tell you is that although I can't remember the details of what I said when I went to the front of this church, what I can tell you is that from that moment, Jesus became real to me. Before then, Jesus was this guy in a story. You know, I had a Jesus Bible storybook that had lots of very sort of old-fashioned pictures in, and I remember I used to look at this, and I'm quite fascinated with this book, and I was fascinated with books in general. Couldn't read them, but I remember I used to look at the pictures in this book. But he was this guy in a funny dress who lived a long time ago, and I didn't really understand much about him, but that moment that I gave my life to God, he suddenly was real to me. And I always say, I'm choking up, I always say that from that moment, he took me on a voyage of discovery. Because it was from that moment that he started to show me himself and what he'd done for me. And how he took all my sin, all the punishment for my sin, all the guilt and the shame for my sin. Not just the sins that I committed as a child, but all the sins that I ever committed after that and ever will commit. You know, all the times I'm selfish, all the times I've done things for me out of a selfish reasons, all the times I've failed in my life. And he took them, and he took all that guilt and all that shame and all the shame of things that even others have done to me. And not only all the guilt and the shame, all the pain and the hurt that I've experienced over my life. All the rejection. And he took all that for me. And he took it and he nailed it to that cross. And all the power that they had over me, all the hold that they have. And he took it and he nailed it to the cross, and he died an agonizing death for me. And even if I'd have been the only person on this planet, he still would have done that for me. Because he loves me. And he took that and he took it to the grave. But then 3 days later, he rose from the dead victorious, so that he could bring me new life and I could live in the fullness of life that he has. I don't have to live under sickness and pain and hurt and sin and rejection anymore, because he took it all. And he he took it to the grave, and then he rose victorious into new life. And he gives me a new life. And all I have to do is accept it and believe it and receive it. And so my life has not been an easy life. But I honestly, I know I wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for the fact that my Jesus holds my hand and brings me through every situation. And my Jesus gives me hope for every situation that's going to come up. And I am not fearful of the future. And I'm not sorry for the past, because my Jesus is just so amazing. And he fills me with joy. He fills me with hope. And I know that he has a future for me, and that I don't need to fear or worry. I'm filming this at a time when the world is in lockdown from this silly virus. My husband works for an airline company. You know, that's our sole income. We're living in a country that if my husband loses his job, we have to leave. But you know what? I'm not fearful, because my God says, he said he saved me. And part of that salvation is his provision for me, as well as his healing for me, as well as on the day that this body of mine breathes its last breath, I will then cross over into glory and have the most amazing existence beyond anything I could ever imagine. Anyway, on that note, I guess I better finish. But you know what? I just want to encourage you, if you don't know the hope that Jesus gives, then just submit your life to him. Just give your whole life to him. Believe that he has died to take all of your sin and punishment and guilt. And he died to give you hope and a new life. So just believe him and accept him. And just ask him to take your life, to be the Lord of your life, and then follow him. Ask him to reveal himself to you. Ask him to take you on a voyage of discovery, to discover who he is and what he's done for you. That is my heart for you. So I will say goodbye, and I pray that you will meet Jesus now. Thank you for taking the time and listening. Bye.